Maybe it was from that childhood I lived of feeling so free and so adventurous. But when I was in my early 20s, with not much money, I set out to travel. And my college roommate and I went to, actually, I hate to say this, don't anybody do this, but we hitchhiked and got down to Crete. And we didn't have much money, so we found a cave on the coast of Crete that we moved into. And we lived in this cave for 2 months. And we cooked all our meals on a little kerosene stove. And we went down to the village and we'd wash our clothes in the water, in the ocean water. And then one day a van came through to the town with some other kids and said, well, we're going to India, come with us. So we jumped in the van and we started traveling in this old rickety van overland. We bought 25 pounds of dried oatmeal and put it in a box on top of the van. That was going to be our food. This sounds like a fairy tale, but we started east, and I ended up traveling by myself and with a few other kids and got all the way to Nepal. I went through Turkey and Syria and Lebanon and Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan and India and Nepal, just traveling, you know, living, camping, and staying among the people that we met, and never hardly spent much money. Would go to the markets and buy a few fruits or vegetables or bread every day, and would cook on the kerosene stove, make eggs, and just lived, you know, this sort of this sublime traveler's life. It was, and the whole time I was doing it, I was reading Lord of the Rings. I have to add that. There was a copy of Lord of the Rings in the van that was all 3 of the trilogy, and I felt like I was Frodo, and we were on our adventure, and we ran into problems. We were in an earthquake in Afghanistan, and we got caught in a riot in Kabul, where they tore apart a lot of things in our van, and we were running through the streets trying to get away from a mad crowd of people based on a car accident that had happened. And we were in many stressful situations, but just going on with our little trip. And I got to Nepal, and I got blood poisoning. And I just was very, very sick, and I went into a hospital that was like a missionary hospital, and I was the only Westerner in the hospital on a ward of Nepalese women. And it was a delirious almost time of I'd look out the window and see Annapurna, I could see the Himalayas, and I was living out that sort of the final throes of that Tolkien dream, in a way, where the whole trip was going to come to an end, and I'd felt like what had happened in my life, none of it really made sense suddenly. And my parents, this is so sad, my parents contacted their congressman because they hadn't heard from me in a long time, and the congressman contacted the embassy in Nepal, and I was visited by an embassy official who said, you know, is there a girl here? You know, and I was there, and I was so embarrassed. I felt like I had just sort of lost my head and headed east, you know, and dropped my poor parents' notes from different, you know, major cities where the post could get through. And so I came back to the States and got well, finally. It took another few months to get well. And then ended up, you know, living in California, and didn't quite come to my senses for a while. And then my poor dad was trying so hard to incorporate my interests into a career, and he told me he'd found a travel training school where I could train to be a travel agent. So I came back to Washington, D.C. and went to this travel training school so I could be respectable. And then one night I went to the theater to watch a musical of Jesse James at Ford's Theater, and this actor walked on stage. It was just gorgeous, playing Jesse James with a guitar, wearing boots and a cowboy hat. And I fell in love with him from the balcony. It was just, my heart just, I went backstage after the show because I knew someone else in the show. And I met Jesse James, and we're about to celebrate our 32nd wedding anniversary next week. So that was Will. And then Will lived in New York. He was just an actor in a show in D.C. traveling. So I went to New York to marry him. And then I finally, after being a waitress and a bartender and everything else in New York to put together a living, I started writing. And I sold my first book. And then I never looked back. So yeah, I had many lucky moments in my life, and where things should have gone terribly wrong, where I made it, and finally found my voice in writing for children in the early 80s.